go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MT4MH Studios, where we spread our love and we share our ketogenic lifestyles. This is the Find Your Keto Show, and I'm your host, Steven T., ready to guide you on your low-carb journey. Today's guest is someone I've been looking forward to speaking with, a trailblazer in the world of nutritional psychiatry and one of the clearest voices helping bridge the gap between mental health and metabolic healing. Nicole Laurent is a licensed mental health counselor, the founder of Mental Health Keto, and a passionate advocate for using ketogenic metabolic therapy to support psychiatric and neurological recovery. But today, we're doing something a little different. Nicole isn't here to talk about her childhood or her diet growing up. She's here to spark your imagination. She's here to help you picture yourself well, to guide you toward what healing might look like in your own life. And most of all, to offer practical tools that you can use right now to begin moving in that direction. Nicole says her energy is in getting people excited about what's possible. And that's exactly what this conversation is about. So if you've ever struggled with brain fog, anxiety, depression, or a diagnosis that felt like a life sentence, this episode is for you. There's more hope and more healing than you've been told. So let's get into it. Nicole, how are you today?
I'm good today. Thank you.
I'm really excited to have you here. And it's interesting for me as a host, as telling people in the community, hey, guess what? Guess who I'm interviewing soon? And everybody's like lighting up and like, oh, she's so sweet and she's doing so much for us. And I just want you to know how well respected you are and how beloved you are by the community. I hope you know that.
That's so nice. Thank you. Yeah. I love my work and I really love what I'm doing, and yeah, it's true.
I hear nothing but good things. Everyone's telling me how nice you are and how much I'm going to enjoy the conversation.
Good.
So where are you in the world?
I am in Vancouver, Washington, which is not the same as Vancouver in Canada. So I'm Vancouver, Washington. It's about 3 hours south of Seattle, over by the Columbia River. It's a really nice community. I really like it here. We've been here about almost 10 years now. We moved here in 2015. I have a sweet little house right by a green belt where my cat likes to play, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Sounds great. How's the weather out there?
It's pretty good. It is like we're having some days that really feel like summer, and then, a few days of cloudy. So that's just what it's like here, but it's much more sun than where I used to live. So I love it.
Oh, that's great. So I'm in Jersey. I'm in central Jersey, pretty close to the coast, and it has been picture perfect the past couple of days, especially today. It's 77, full sun, no humidity. I have all the windows open, so no AC. And yeah, it's just beautiful. I love this time of year so much. I like everything blooming. So the daffodils came out and they're gone, and all the trees are filling in. And it's one of my favorite times of year.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I have an amazing neighborhood where people really garden. And when I go for walks almost every day, and it feels like my own private garden, just, walking my mile or so a day. It's beautiful.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm a big walker too. I walk several times a day. One of my favorite things to do is walk first thing in the morning before I really do anything. I get up, I test my bloods, and then I go for a walk. And it doesn't matter how cold it is. I love going, even if it's just a quick 5 or 10 minute walk. I love getting outside and walking.
It's good. Yeah. Yeah. It gets pretty cold there for you, right? I mean, like you say, it doesn't matter if it's cold, but I feel like you guys get a little bit colder than I do where I'm at.
Our winters are typically, we had a very strong winter this year with what do they call them? The Arctic blast that came through.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like 7 degrees some mornings. That's not typical. It's usually like high 20s, low 30s in the morning, which is that's not terrible. I can do. I'm a barefoot guy. So I'm out there walking around my neighborhood barefoot. And I didn't care if it was 7 degrees out or there's snow on the ground, because that helps make me happy.
Wait, like actual barefoot in that cold, or like barefoot shoes?
No. I barefoot shoes was like years ago for me. No, barefoot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It got tough during those Arctic blasts when, like I said, when it was like 7 or 10 degrees, because after a little while, it feels like you're walking on razor blades. So I couldn't do it very long,
Yeah.
but I still did it. It's just having the contact with the ground is something I've found that makes me happy and calm. And that's what I'm looking for in life. I want to be as happy and calm as possible because my default state is irritable and angry. Happy and calm is the opposite. And if it means I'm walking around the neighborhood barefoot, that's what I do. It makes me happy. I love it.
Do what you need to do to feel better
That's
in
right.
an
Yeah.
adaptive way. Yes, it's good.
Right. And in a pragmatic way. I don't do anything as a dogmatism, as a belief. I if for some reason my feet start bothering me, and then I will wear shoes. I will sandals, or I do have barefoot shoes, or I do a lot of sprinting barefoot too. So if I sprint a lot for a couple of weeks, my feet will start to bother me, and then I can't walk as much. So I will wear sandals. I'm not like religious about it. When I say dogmatic, it's not like this belief like, well, I'm never putting shoes on it. And when I go to a store, I'm putting shoes on. I'm proper. You know what I mean? When I'm at my kid's school, picking her up and dropping her off, I'm putting shoes on. I'm not like the weird guy showing up barefoot to pick his kid up.
Thank you for reassuring me. Yes, no, I'm sure you're fine.
And the other thing I always like to tell people is I wash my feet all throughout the day. And if I go for a barefoot walk, the first thing I do when I come home is I wash my feet because people are like, "Oh, what are you doing in your house?" So I always tell people, "Don't worry, I'm clean. I'm clean."
It's good.
All right, let's start out with a question I've been asking some of my guests in the beginning. It's about your strongest traits. We all have strengths that carry us through challenges. And I want to know, what do you consider your strongest traits or skills, and how have they shaped your ketogenic journey?
Hmm. Um, that's what are my strongest traits? You know, I think that a lot of times our identification with what our strongest traits are just simply kind of based on beliefs, um, the mirroring that other people have shown us about who they think we are. And so I suppose, I really, let's see, how do I not sound so woo woo? So I have a sense of self that is, of course, constructed around the mirroring that other people have shown me about how they experience me over the years, and then I have my sense of self around um, who I am and how I vibe and how I feel. So I suppose what people have mirrored to me over the years is that one of my strongest traits is my curiosity, I would say. And I think curiosity really drives the question of, you know, where am I headed and what can be better and where do I want to go and what does this mean for me and what does this mean for others. And so I think probably my curiosity has been a big driver and might be one of my traits that I get the most feedback about.
I love that. It's funny that you say the word curiosity because when I was interviewing Georgia Eat, I asked her those questions, and she's a psychiatrist. So what she did was she bounced it back at me. She said, "Well, what would your answers be?" And nobody had ever asked that before. I had already given it some thought, but that was one of my answers, was curiosity, because I love to question everything. That's part of the reason that I'm walking barefoot, because I'm questioning why are we wearing shoes? And there's a lot of people that they wear slippers in their house, and so they're never barefoot. And I love to be curious, and it drives me. It drives me to be the best me that I can be, but just by questioning everything out there.
Yeah.
So you had an exciting announcement today about a nonprofit. I think we should talk about that off the top too.
Yeah. So I have I, yeah, I have a nonprofit. I've had the nonprofit for since 2022 when I started my online program, my brain fog recovery program, which it's named that. It's kind of a funny story how that name came about, but um, so I had this online program and I would take enrollment calls and I would occasionally get people who couldn't pay or were low income and I didn't want to turn them away from it. So I had started a nonprofit so I could bring them in through that way into the online program. And then I worked with Lauren Kennedy on the Living Well with Schizophrenia channel, and lots of people saw her recover and thrive. And so I got really a kind of a big interest, both for the online program and my individual consultation services. And I had like a wait list there for a while where people were, waiting 3 to 4 months to get in. And chopped away at that as fast as I could. But the piece where I would get a lot of people from her audience that were, of course, living with schizophrenia and other serious mental illness, and many of them were on disability, government disability, or were very low income. And so I already had this great little nonprofit in place. I had a scalable online program where I was able to bring them in with the other people who people had been paid to be in the program, and it was wonderful. And I just kind of think it was like such a cool thing that I had this ability to not turn people away when I most needed to not turn people away. So I was really excited about that. And then but I did it quietly, so people would do enrollment calls with me, and I would assess the situation, and I would listen, and I would let them in for free or for very, very low cost. I did it quiet because I had this kind of I guess it was a fear or a belief that, oh my gosh, if people knew that I was doing this, I would get like a wave of people who need access to this, and I'm just one woman, and I have a very scalable program, but at some point onboarding people and getting people set up and running the Q&As, that would be, in my mind I was like, my gosh, it's going to be millions, it's going to be terrible, and then these people are not going to get in, and they're going to just be disappointed. And so anyway, so I had this mindset that it was better to just do it quietly. And if someone came my way asking, but after having lots of enrollment calls with these people, and they were, you could just see them bracing when they're like, how much does this cost? And the relief, the absolute relief that people get when you say, yes, come on in. We're going to make sure you have the knowledge that you need to implement this. And I mean, people would cry like they won the lottery or something. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just really needed. This is hope for people. And so then I guess I just woke up one morning and my mindset had shifted to, it's better to be on the wait list and have hope that you're going to have access to something than it is to not know that there's a path forward for you with the current system as it is. And so my nonprofit, I just decided I was going to open it up and see what happens. And if I get a bananas long wait list, well, that is just proof to funders that this is wanted and needed. And if I get a really long wait list, we have a great community, and people will donate and support and help me get people in off the wait list as fast as I can manage them in my program. I can always add another live Q&A, 90-minute live Q&A a week, if there's a big enough demand. So I'm just kind of really stubbornly determined to fund this and scale this in such a way that I can make a difference. And maybe I can't take 1,000 people, and I certainly probably can't take 1,000,000 people. I use like the Thinkific platform. I don't even think it could handle that much. I would need something special made, but I can't do 1,000,000. Maybe I could do 1,000 over a few years, but and I for sure could do 120 this year without any additional help, probably. Although I have an admin now helping me. So yeah, that's a lot. So that's a lot for the people who I can service and that I can get in, and the community helping me help those people. That's a big deal. So I decided to just do it.
No, it's a huge deal. And so I'm curious, when you say 120 people for the year, this is just for the nonprofit side of it. This is in addition to your regular practice, right?
Yeah. So I do private consultation, and I, private consultation is hard because you only have so much time, and I have a lot of other things that I really like to do. Like I have a really exciting recovery project that it's qualitative research, which is very time consuming, and I need time for that. And so I'm moving more and more away from individual consultation. I really don't think it's necessarily superior to the online program in any way, shape, or form, although people often feel like that, individual consultation that costs more is somehow superior. That has not been my experience. Maybe I'm doing individual consultation wrong, but I don't think so. So, because there in the online program there is a beautiful peer support component where people go on live Q&As and they get to hear other people's experiences, different states of the journey, where they are in their wellness, people with the same really difficult diagnosis. They're having conversations about, they have conversations with each other about medication tapers and all kinds of stuff that, and it's so beautiful. We do Friday wins and big or small, share your Friday wins, and people share those wins. And for the people that are just starting out, who are still having, some people have great improvement right away, kind of spectacular recoveries, and other people, it takes a while. They have many days, more good days than bad days eventually, but at first there are periods of time that they're not feeling good, or they felt good for a few days and it went away, and they're trying to figure out, is it going to come back, and that's really scary for them. So the peer support piece is a really big deal, for everybody. And also my online program is unlimited, which sounds, it's kind of a weird term in the course world, unlimited access, but really what that means is that there isn't a time limit for these people in order to access the information, assimilate the information. It's a lot of information. And so they don't have to worry about, oh, I'm going to lose access in 3 months or 6 months, because a lot of the people that I work with have really significant cognitive impairment. And that's part of why we have the live Q&As. Like they can watch a video, but it might not stick, and they'll come into Q&As and they'll ask the question, and it's okay if they ask that question every Q&A for the next 6 months, like they're going to eventually get it. We're going to support them through it. And so until I retire, which is not going to be anytime soon, um, until I retire the program someday in the far off future, they can come to as many Q&As as they want. And I think that is way more superior than individual consultation.
Yeah, I would agree with you absolutely. The sense of community, that just to have community, I think is an integral part of our recovery and then our health. I have some small groups that I run, and even for myself, I'm kind of the coach in there, but I'm doing everything that everybody else is doing. I'm still testing my bloods, I'm doing the diet, and just to have other people to interact with on a daily basis has become very meaningful. And this whole thing with this nonprofit, I mean, this is incredible what you're doing, because a lot of the questions I get from people in the community are like, well, what am I supposed to do? I can't afford to go to somebody and get the help I need. And you hear that a lot. So you're making it accessible, and part of it is just getting this available to people so it becomes more known and more mainstream, because it's still, it's a tidal wave, and it's coming, this whole ketogenic diet and metabolic therapies, especially for in psychiatry. It's a tidal wave that can't be stopped, but the quicker we can move it, the better it'll be for everybody. And that's what you're doing. You're accelerating the pace of the awareness, and you're going to be helping lots of really desperate people. And it's just so incredible. I'm so happy that you're doing this.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm honored. I'm honored to do this. And I like this access for them because it goes around a system that has a really hard time implementing change. Right? So think about the trickle down effect. So now we have, um, like, we've got Ellenhorn, which is a high cost program. We have some others popping up that are high cost programs, private pay programs. Maybe some can be covered by insurance or private insurance, some pieces of it. And we're talking about the disability and the low income people. And so those are people who are often on state insurance, and state insurance. At least in my state, there are some states that pay reasonable for practitioners to be on state insurance. But if you are not a big medical system that takes state insurance as part of all the other insurances, right? It's not profitable, or so. Not that practitioners are necessarily motivated only by profit, right? But if you're a small practitioner like me, which is a one woman show, it's very difficult to take state insurance. And as soon as you take state insurance, there really is a tsunami of people, because not enough people take it, because it just doesn't cover being in private practice, period. Right. And so for many years, when I, as a licensed mental health counselor, you get people, and you do take pro bono in, or many do. I do and did for many years, and still do, obviously, um, but it's just not a sustainable thing for a practitioner, which sounds terrible, I know, but it's just the reality. And so you, so these are state ways to provide insurance, and there aren't a lot of practitioners who necessarily take state insurance, and there's certainly not a lot doing what I do that takes state insurance that I've been able to find. And I know, because when people come to me, I give them this big document. I cut and paste this document in with links for them to explore, to try to find someone who takes their insurance that can help them with this. And sometimes that's a prescriber or a medical doctor, a nurse practitioner. Sometimes it's a therapist. George's diagnosis diet clinician directory is really useful. I send them a private dietitian link that they can explore. Many people have found Denise Potter's group, for example, through that. And so they go off and they search and they cannot find a financially accessible solution. It just kind of doesn't exist. That's medical care. And so over the last few years, I've really been working with creating treatment teams with people. So one knowledgeable ketogenic professional on a treatment team can be really all great success with that, right? So they get access to me through the online program as a ketogenic professional, and they do get customized macros. We play with ratios, we check their chronometer, we test their ketones and glucose, and we fine tune things. We help them find things to eat. There's the peer community. So they have this ketogenic professional and this ketogenic community that they become a part of, and then they find a collaborative psychiatrist, or at least a willing psychiatrist. They find, they maybe have a therapist or an existing therapist that they work with, and we pull these treatment teams together. And this program being education and support, and very clearly laid out that it is not medical care, that is not that part of the team, and that is, I think, really crucial, because it goes around the established system as it is. It says you don't have to wait. We don't have to wait 10 years, 5 years. I'm optimistic. Maybe it'll be 5 years. I'm hoping my nonprofit doesn't even need to exist in 5 years, that this is going to be standard of care, that anybody with any insurance in any medical system can get access to. That is, I want to close this sucker down. This nonprofit, I do not want it to have to exist. Not that I don't enjoy working with this people, this wonderful population. The honor of getting to watch these people move towards recovery and achieve it often is amazing. And but I shouldn't be needed, and this nonprofit should not be needed, but it is. And so here it is, and we're going to do it, and we're going to make it work, and it's going to be really helpful to really a lot of people. But this should be standard of care, and they should have access to it. Now, us asking them to just hang out, just suffer with all these medication side effects, and this obesity, and this brain fog, and this inability to show up for your life fully. Like, you're good. You can wait until it actually is available in your medical system. You can wait until insurance covers it. Too bad you can't access it. I don't feel good about that. And so, we talked to, so I should say, Steven's like, I ask all these questions about your personal story, and I'm like, I'm not into that. Like, I really like to focus on the future and like where I'm headed and where I'm going. And I'm not in that dark place anymore. Right. But I had really significant cognitive impairment in my story. And I remember how it felt to not be able to show up for my life, to desperately want to show up for my life and not be able to. And so I have much empathy for this population. And And then also, being a licensed mental health counselor now for almost 18 years, I think it is. Um, I get what it means to leave people on the sideline suffering, or to not be able to reduce that suffering. And so that just is, and when we have this available to people and we see how well they do on it, and how accessible it really is for them, I just think that is, it's not okay for me. Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not okay. And if you're someone who's like me, I have an 8-year-old who's got her own issues, and I'm lucky that I have found ketogenic and metabolic therapies for myself, because 6 years ago, before I found this, I wasn't able to show up as the dad I wanted to be. And if you're someone in my position with a young kid, you can't tell them wait 2 or 3 years. If the kid's 5 years old, by the time they're 8, they're developing. And if you're someone like me, I deal with the irritability and anger, and it's no way for a kid to see their parent acting. You know, and one of the things I wanted to ask you about, so your nonprofit may be suitable for me in my situation. I don't know if you would have children in there or not. My daughter she's diagnosed ADHD, but it's her OCD, which is really a problem. And we've had her on a ketogenic diet now for almost 2 years. And we've had a neuropsychologist working with us and her pediatrician and all. But we finally got her blood work done last summer, and everybody was alarmed by her cholesterol because they're going by the old standards of her LDL is high, and they want her off the diet. So we're trying to get a dietitian to work with. We did a free call with Denise Potter's group, but we can't afford. That's part of our problem, is we just can't afford it in our lives to do
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So would there be any room in your program for someone like me who wanted to come in but have it be about my daughter's journey and not so much mine?
Yeah. So the online program is limited to adults, 18 and older. And so yeah, it wouldn't be an appropriate fit for your daughter, unfortunately. But wouldn't it be cool if someone else did a nonprofit that was specifically for children? Yeah, around this issue. So the nonprofit, it's called Brain Fog Recovery Source, and the initiative is a metabolic psychiatry initiative, and it's focused primarily in this moment on people on government disability. Cat woke up. And so that's where we're putting most of our attention at this moment, is just people on government disability with the paperwork to show it, and then we move them into the program as quickly as we can. But we do look at low income also. So for example, there's lots of people who would meet disability status or low income status. I got this cat. I told you that she was coming. Um, and and so that they meet criteria for it for sure, and they're low income, but they haven't gone through the process of obtaining government disability, and so we look at those cases individually and kind of assess from there. And so if people are on disability, we're looking at government disability, we're looking at full scholarship in US and Canada, and secondary will assess people in other countries to some degree, depending how easy or difficult it is to determine that. And then we also will look at low income status also, um, and when someone is on a partial scholarship, whatever they pay goes towards the nonprofit specifically as a donation. And so that's how we've been doing it. But yes, really, there should be something like what I do that works with parents of children, because that would be amazing.
Maybe that's something that I'll head up, because it's a passion of mine now. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's been difficult now, and we saw the pediatrician recently, and she tried telling me that she needs starch in her diet. What she said was, for her microbiome, for her mitochondria, and for her brain development. Those are the things that she told me she needs starch for.
Well, maybe you just ignore her and do your thing. Maybe you don't need to give that a lot of attention. Maybe you just keep doing what you're doing because you're seeing benefits, um, and you don't spend a lot of energy and time trying to convince someone of something.
Right. And that's And that's the viewpoint I would take, but it's frustrating when that's what you're hearing from the kid's doctor. And that's like the best help we can get. That's the doctor that's in town, that's down the street, that's in our insurance, and that's what we can
Sure.
afford. And when I try to explain what the ketogenic diet is, and I'm saying it's a low carb diet, and then she's telling me, well, where is she getting her starch from? Like, no, there is there is no starch in her diet. So it's frustrating, but I'm glad you clarified who your nonprofit is for, because it's a very specific group of the population. So even
Yeah,
someone like me, if I wanted to do it for myself, even though I can't afford a professional, I wouldn't qualify because I'm not low income or on disability or whatever. So it's good to know what the specific group is. You're going to help a lot of people, and you're going to help some of the people that need it the most.
I think so. And I want to specify too. So it, so the people who come to see me, so the appropriate fit for my nonprofit and for working with me are people that are get out of my way. I've already decided I want to do this. Show me how to do it, people. So if someone is hearing this and they're kind of on the fence about whether they want to do it and they're not so sure about it, they need to go to Metabolic Mind and kind of explore that for themselves. Before you send an email to nonprofit at mentalhealthketo.com, you need to be in the mindset of, let me in, please. I'm ready to go.
And those are the type of people that I like working with the best as well. So I've been helping people for about a year now, and those are the people, the ones that are desperate or they're at rock bottom and they're just ready to do whatever it takes. Those are the ones that are going to be determined, and they're going to be disciplined, and they're going to put in the effort. And those are the ones that you're going to see succeed as well. That's been my experience.
Yeah, and I'm just always, I'm really pleasantly surprised, like how like determined they are to get this and to, like they really work hard. um Although nothing is harder than having poorly treated mental illness or medication side effects, this is easy by comparison in many ways, but they really do work very hard to implement this and to get it right for them. And it's really exciting to see them, how far they come in a short period of time and in mastering this.
It's great when you can reach out and you can help somebody and you give them some tools, and then you see them integrate it into their own lives, and you see them improve. And then what I've even been able to witness is they're helping the next person in line too, which is even more gratifying, because now you're doing well and you're passing it on. And yeah, it's like, how do I explain it? Like, it's filling a hole in me that I didn't know was there. When I was suffering with bipolar 20 years ago, I had a giant hole in me, and I was trying to fill it with all kinds of stuff. But I've been pretty good the past couple of years. I didn't know that I had this missing piece of seeing others succeed, and the community, being able to interact with others and then helping them, and then they're helping someone else. It's been very, very gratifying. I really love it.
Yeah, I think we're definitely wired for relationship and people, and yeah, it's good.
Right, and that's why I think the community is so beneficial for our mental health. I think at a scientific level, you could say it's good for our mitochondria to have strong relationships with people, and to have community and people you reach out to. And one of the things I like to do with people is, as much as we're texting on our phones all day, I like to at least leave a voice message so you can hear each other's voices. I like to do video calls with people too. It's the closest thing you can get to being in person. Because to me, there as a next level, like, you're just sitting staring at your phone all day and you're typing to somebody, but there's like still a lack of, to me, there's a lack of connection there. So I love doing video calls with people, and just hang like we are now, like just hanging out, and um, it makes me happy. It helps me feel good. It helps me have a happy day. There's been plenty of times where I was having a terrible morning for whatever reason. I got on a video call because I had an appointment with somebody, and almost instantly I feel better. I'm smiling, I'm happy, and I forgot what my morning was all about. I love it.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to feel present with people. Yeah, and distract from whatever sometimes gets in our head about, the momentum around certain thoughts about this or that, and
Mhm.
to just kind of, I think being with, if your brain is working pretty well, I think it's not too hard to be emotionally and completely present with other people. And I think people feel that when we're there, like we're really there and we're capable of that kind of connection and that kind of listening and that kind of processing. It's a big social is a big cognitive load. And when people communicate that I don't like people, or I don't like being social, or I don't like being out in the world, that's just who I am, or whatever. I get curious about that, and I wonder if their brain is not working very well to the point where it's such a cognitive load to be with present and process conversations and process emotions. Like, there are a few things that are as cognitively demanding as a good conversation, right? And so or have hopefully having a good conversation. So there's a lot of processing that's going on. And so I think that if people start to avoid peopling in a very methodical kind of manner, that can be a little bit of a sign of cognitive impairment or something else going on.
Absolutely. That's one of my symptoms that I deal with. And even when I'm doing a ketogenic diet and metabolic therapies, if I fall off a little bit and I don't keep my fat percentage very high where I need it, I start to get where I want to withdraw from people. And I have this symptom of I just don't want to do things. I'm doing the bare minimum. I'm doing my day job. I'm being a dad, but then showing up for other people, and I want to withdraw, and I'm not as interactive. And it becomes the way you described it is good. It is like a cognitive load. Like I could sit on my phone on Facebook and just scroll for 20 minutes, but because that's easy, and that's got to be doing something for my dopamine. I'm enjoying it. But to get on a call with somebody it feels like such a chore. Like it's hard, it's demanding. It's not something I want to do. And when I get my stuff back together and I get my ketones back up where they need to be, that goes away right away. That's the first thing. I become friendly and happy, and like I want to reach out. Like, who's the next person I'm going to interact with? There's a big difference in the way that my brain functions between those two states.
Yeah, you said something interesting earlier that my little therapist ears grabbed onto. It was something like, what did you say? You said my baseline state is grumpy. What was that you said?
It's it's irritable and angry. And if I'm not practicing any kind of metabolic therapies and using a ketogenic diet, yes, that's I'm irritable and angry.
So so maybe we need a reframe here, not to therapy you or anything, but just as a one human to another. Maybe that's not your baseline state. Maybe your baseline state is when you are in a ketogenic state. Maybe you were always supposed to be in a ketogenic state, and the deviation is that other state. That's the deviation. That's not the real Steven.
I love that. And I've thought of that before. And I just I guess I need to remember to say it that way. I need to remind myself that that's the case. So when I eat the diet that is appropriate for me, that makes me feel my best, then yeah, I'm the person that I want to be. But when I deviate from that, so I'm doing the epileptic version. I'm aiming to keep my fat at or above 90% on most days. But I'm also highly active. I like to lift weights and kayak and do all these things. And I like to try to get my protein in as well. So I do have days of higher protein, but if I'm not reaching that 90% on most days, then it's real easy for me to fall off, and I can go from a 10 to an 8. I've spoken about this a million times, and there's a big difference for me between the 10 and the 8. And even at an 8, I might have a little bit of irritability and anger. Unfortunately, that's like the first thing that I get. And having a kid at home with her own troubles, that's not what I'm looking for. I need to try to stay at that 10. And it can be real easy. It can be just there's a cold in the house. My kid's in third grade. My wife works in a preschool. There's germs all year round, you know? And it could just be a bad night's sleep, or I'm fighting a cold. Sometimes I don't even like they've got a cold. I don't have any symptoms, but I'll notice that my sugar is higher than it should be for the way I'm eating. And then all of a sudden that evening, I'm a little bit irritable and angry. So it's easy for me to say that's like my default state unless I'm really fighting hard against it, you know?
Yeah, it might be helpful to have a reframe around that. I'm not feeling myself in this moment, as opposed to there I go back to my default state.
Right. And look at myself as the 10 that I want to be. as the calm and happy Steven. That's myself. That's the
Yeah,
real me.
absolutely.
I like that. Thank you. All right, let's get into some of my interview outline here. I've heard you say you love helping people imagine themselves well. And I want to know, what does that process look like for someone who is just starting out? How do you imagine yourself well?
Yeah, imagine themselves well. So, when people have chronic mental illness, out of necessity, their world gets very, very small in terms of their. It's about coping from moment to moment, and so their capacity goes down, and it might be a very kind of insidious thing where they're not even aware that their capacity is going down and their life is getting smaller and smaller. And then when they adopt the diagnosis given to them, or they agree with the diagnosis given to them, and what the meaning is behind that diagnosis, it's very common to go to a place of, okay, this is as big as my life can be. These are the things in it that I can do. These other things are out of my reach. And so I, and it's nothing that we talk about right away, because no one, like, let's see, how do I say this? People are coping with serious mental illness. They are doing the absolute best they can. Nobody wants to hear, oh, the small life that you've built isn't enough for you. Like, that's not what we're doing here. That's not like, I get that, because I had a very, very small life at one point. And out of necessity, out of survival. So I totally get it. But one of the cool and fun parts of what I get to do is I get to help them start to examine whether the boundaries that they put on their life are still valid. It has your capacity increased or improved in this or this way? Could you do that thing that you normally didn't do? And luckily, as people's brain health improves, their self-directed behavior often will improve, and they will be less overwhelmed, and they will start doing things that normally they wouldn't do. And then they'll be like, oh, look what I just did. And that wasn't even hard, right? And so they come to me with these stories, and their partners come to me with these stories, and the family members notice it sometimes before they do. And then so there's that piece, they're saying things like, I'm reading again. And then I'm like, oh, that's awesome. What kind of books did you like to read? And what kinds of books would you want to read if this continued to improve, if your stamina and capacity for reading improved? What are some of the things you want to explore that you didn't really have access to prior? And so it's just a matter of that. I like helping them question the boundaries, the box they've kind of put their life in survival mode before recovery, and how big that box can become after.
That's great. So the thing you said about reading reminds me of how, when I'm talking to people, I'm always asking people what they're passionate about. Because typically, if you're somebody who's passionate about reading, but you're in the survival mode, you're not thinking about reading. And if you are thinking about it, it's not something you can even do. Some of these people, you know how it is, they can't even leave their houses to go shopping. They can't do their laundry. They can't make their bed. So they're not thinking about something they're passionate about. But I always try to get people to tap into something they're passionate about. And even if it's reading, and even if it's going to take you 6 weeks before you can read a book, you can at least start thinking about it. And I found for people that, even just, and for myself, just thinking about something you're passionate about can make you feel better. It can give you some motivation or some drive, or help you feel a little bit better.
Yeah. And that expansion out. So that exploratory behavior, that exploratory, um, that that happens with sometimes a different brain chemistry than what they're coming in with, right? Or a different working brain. And so it's just something that you just watch blossom. It's good. I like it.
So if someone is feeling stuck or hopeless, what would be the first thing you tell them?
Well, stuck or hopeless, like that's a big question without a lot of context around what they're feeling stuck and hopeless about. Did you have more of an example in mind?
Not specifically. This is what I hear from a lot of people, is that they're either hopeless because they think keto is not going to work for them, or they feel stuck because they've been doing it and it's not working for them. Maybe when you dig into the details, they're not really doing it right, or they're not doing it as well as they could. But that's what I hear from a lot of people, is that they feel stuck and hopeless. I was just curious if you had something you'd be able to tell them, the first thing you would say.
Yeah. Well, like you said, doing a ketogenic diet in a medical kind of way, like a medical ketogenic diet, is very different than a weight loss keto diet, for example. And there's a lot of people who are trying to implement it on their own, and it's very difficult. When I first started my ketogenic diet, I could not get into a level of ketosis that was consistent. I was doing, listening to all the podcasts, trying to figure out how to do it. It took me like a good month to try to troubleshoot it. And so I would say that most of the people who come to me are already on a ketogenic diet or some form of low carbohydrate diet, and they have not been getting the results that they want. And one of the things that I communicate to people that I think is probably one of the most helpful things that I communicate to them and consistently remind them about is that, and I've said this on many, many podcasts, so forgive me if it's redundant for listeners, but the model you use to decide whether a medication is effective or not is not the appropriate model to use in assessing whether your ketogenic diet is effective or not. And the reason I say that is because in epilepsy, people use ketogenic diets to get seizure control, and it takes 3.2 months for them to get seizure control. And what that means is that for those 3.2 months, they are still getting seizures. They are just less intense, of shorter duration. They recover faster. Maybe the prodromal phase of the seizure is less intense. And then they are also getting little cognitive improvements along the way. Over those 3.2 months, it's not that their seizures stop. Like when we think about whether a medication is effective, we're saying, oh, do I still have hallucinations? Do I still have delusions? Have they stopped? That is not the algorithm that you are going to want to use to assess whether your ketogenic diet is effective or not. Okay? Because just like people with epilepsy are going to still get seizures off and on during those 3.2 months on average, you're probably going to get mood symptoms for those 3.2 months on average. You're going to have some good days, and then you're going to have a big range of bad days. And then you got to, so you got to think, I'm healing a brain. There's stuff going on under the hood as my brain is healing, as my body is trying to find balance and repair things that I don't have any control over, that I am quite frankly not smart enough to even know what's going on under there, right? And so it's a different algorithm, and it's a different relationship with your brain and your body, where you have to understand that your brain and your body want to function. You guys have the same goals, and that is part of the thing that just really I was going to swear. I was going to say, it really pisses me off about the medical system and the medical establishment is it creates this dynamic, an adversarial dynamic with our body. It tells us your brain is against you. Your body is against you. It doesn't want what you want. It's malfunctioning, right? And so instead of us going for root causes that are like, why is that malfunctioning? Like, what is my brain not getting, or my body not getting, or what is the environment that's not happening that's allowing my body to do exactly what it wants to do that I want, to thrive, right? To be present, to be joyous, to do all these things, to be curious. What am I not giving it, or what is not happening under the hood that I could provide that would fix that? It sets up this adversarial power struggle between you and your body. And now instead of giving our body what it needs to thrive and to heal, we're fighting with it with these symptoms and this medication. And it's just such a dysfunctional dynamic. Just such a dysfunctional dynamic. And so yeah, if you do a ketogenic diet to try to heal your brain and your body, you're going to have to change your relationship. because every time you are fighting with it, every time you are um, falling into despair because you have a bad day or two on your ketogenic diet, when after you felt amazing, for a few days, that's slowing you down. That's slowing your healing down. And so using the same algorithm that you use for medication is not appropriate for this intervention, in my opinion.
That's really great. I'm so glad that you said this, because there's a lot of people out there that are struggling with this. And I'll talk to somebody and they'll say, "Well, it's not work. I don't think keto is going to work for me." And I'll ask them, "How long you been doing it?" And they'll say, "Well, it's been 6 days." Like, are you kidding? It's like 6 minutes. Like, you need more time. I've never heard the stat about epilepsy with the 3.2 weeks. So you're talking with 13 weeks, right? And there are people that have been doing it, and they'll say, "Well, it's been 6 weeks already, and I was feeling so good on week 3, but now I'm in week 6." And, well, what if keto is just not going to work for me? And it's hard. It's a hard message to deliver, but I tell people, you just got to be patient. You got to be consistent. You got to stick with it. And I always tell people that, like, look at me. I've been doing this for years now, and I'm still seeing improvements. I'm still seeing things changing and getting better. And the times that I fall off for whatever reason, I recover much quicker and it gets better. Like, it's a long journey you're on. You're playing this long game, and it takes a long time. And I always look to people like Chris Palmer or Georgia Ede that'll say, they want your ketones at 1.5 or higher for, you know, 3 months, or they'll say 2 month minimum. So it's a long time that it takes to try to heal your brain. Now, unfortunately, there's a message out there that from some people that they get better right away. They have like overnight success. I don't hear a lot of this personally from people. I don't see this happening, but people are under the impression that if they don't get better right away, that it's not going to work for them.
That's not true. Yeah. I mean, I will say and I just for transparency, and I want people to understand, there are people who they do a ketogenic diet and they don't respond. Like they do not respond. There's something else going on, or there's some factor in the way of the treatment effects that we would expect. And they exist, and they are a little bit rare, but they are. Because I almost always see people derive some benefit from it, and the people who I would who they would identify as this didn't do the trick for me. Sometimes they'll have good days on a ketogenic diet, but it's not sustained for whatever reason. We really have a lot of research to do to figure out what's going on with all that. But they have some good days here and there, where before that was just not even a thing. That was not even an option. So when I say non-responders, most of the time it's something like that, where they do get some good days. They do get some sun breaking through the clouds, right? For periods, and they really enjoy that. But then symptoms can come back. And so there's that piece. And then I have worked with a few people where, they had like really crushing fatigue and symptoms, and it didn't do the trick for them. And I know they did the diet right. And I knew they were at a high ratio, and I knew they were making good ketones. And I think if you talk to people in Denise Potter's group also, they would tell you that exists. And I think that's important to talk about, right? Because what we don't want is, we don't want people doing ketogenic diets, getting professional help for ketogenic diets, sticking with it for a good, 6 months, and then feeling like they did it wrong, or that they're extra broken somehow. That's not it. That just means there's something we're not understanding yet. And I would always say, whatever ends up being your effective treatment, I bet you a lot that your ketogenic diet is going to help be the foundation of it, right? Because you cannot heal in a tornado of metabolic distress in your body, right? And all the, like, whatever healing you figure out, it's probably going to be on top of a low carbohydrate or ketogenic diet, where you're gonna get the best effects. But maybe that's my bias, but that's what I see. Like when we do functional blood chemistry analysis, it's so much easier to see possible roads to go down on someone on a ketogenic diet than someone who has not changed their diet. Like the blood work for someone who has a metabolic, hot mess metabolic syndrome that's affecting all these different markers in all these different ways, it's much harder to say, oh, maybe they have a parasite. It's much harder to see, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's, so it's those pieces. So that's the foundation. But, and then there are those people that they just respond beautifully, like almost magic. And then there's but most of y'all are in between. Most of you all are doing a low carb diet. You're getting days of good and then days of bad. And I will say that it is so much harder to have a bad day after you've had a good day. The contrast is devastating. And I would say, and so when I say you shouldn't fall into despair, that's easy for me to say, right? Because, and I get it, because back when I was doing in the early days of my ketogenic diet, I would have a few days where my brain was on and I could think and it was amazing and I did things. And then it would go back and it was terrifying. It was like, oh my gosh, is that like what I get? And then now I'm back here. Like, I get the emotional piece of that. And again, that is why community is so much more superior than just private consultation alone, right? Because they hear that from other people. Oh yeah, that happens, So again, keep your eye on the prize. Don't use the same algorithm that you do for medications, but yeah, there's days, and I always tell people, they're like, oh, I've done a low carb diet for 6 months and I haven't got any better. I said, your day one starts with me, and it doesn't start until we get your macros adjusted. When your ketone levels are 1.5 and above pretty consistently, maybe you're waking up at a 1, ideally, although not everyone can do that because of medications and dawn effect and all that. But I'll tell you when your start date is, I say, because otherwise you get in your head and you're like, I've been doing this for 10 years and it hasn't worked. Well, no, you haven't been doing it consistently. You've been all over the place. That is not a start date. So I get to tell them when their start date is, when they get to start. And then if they fall off, it's not like you got to start over, but you got to be consistent enough where your brain gets what it needs for a long enough time to heal.
Yeah, exactly. I love the way you do things. It's great. And I love hearing you talk about chronometer and macros and ketones. It's all the same stuff that I'm telling people, but it's a lot more meaningful coming from you than it is coming from me, because I'm just a guy doing it for myself. I had a friend of mine last year who I was trying to help him out. And I was like, you need an app. You need to weigh your food. You got to track. If you want to use chronometer, that's what I'm good at. I can teach you. He didn't want to do it. I told him, you got to get a keto mojo. You got to test your bloods. He didn't want to do it. Then he came to see you and you told him the same thing. He's like, oh, guess what I'm doing now? Like, they just need to hear it from a professional, So I can speak on my experience on what we were just talking about. So for me, I can do a 4-to-1 ratio diet, but if I am still consuming inflammatory foods like dairy, or I've discovered cocoa butter. Now, cocoa butter is 100% fat. So it fits in a 4-to-1 ratio very easily, but it causes me skin issues, a little bit of digestive issues, and it, like dairy, I'll get irritable and angry. Now my bipolar won't come back. I'm not going to be dealing with depression and hypomania and the rapid cycling and all that, but I will still be irritable and angry, and it'll take the edge off of me, and I won't have the clarity I need and the energy I need. So if that was my experience, if that's all I knew, I would say that ketogenic diet doesn't work for me. But when I remove all those foods and I eat ruminants only, high fat, ruminant only, I go to this other level. I take away all the inflammatory stuff. And now I can say that doing it this way, this ketogenic diet, is the most miraculous thing I've ever found in my life. And it allows me to be the person I want to be and the father I want to be. So I share that experience with people. Like, it might just be some food item that you're consuming that's causing neuroinflammation, and we just got to figure out what it is by taking some stuff out. I always recommend, if you're already consuming animals, people to go to a lion diet. Nobody wants to do it because it's so restrictive, but that's the best way to do it. If you can just go to ruminant meat, salt, and water for 30 days, and then let's add some stuff back in and see what happens. I've done all this self-experimentation over the years, so I know what affects me, and that's how I ended up on the diet I'm on, because this is what works best for me. I'm to a point now where even adding in conventionally raised pork and chicken will cause me some issues. I'll get some stomach distress from it. Now, it doesn't tank my mood, but it's not optimal for me. And that's why I have what I call HFBO, or high fat beef only. It's really ruminants, but it's a combination of lion diet and the 4-to-1 ratio epileptic diet that I do. And I try to get people to do it, but nobody wants to do it because it's not easy to do. You have to eat a lot of fat. You have to eat solid animal fat like I do, but it works. And there could be a lot of people out there who feel like they've been doing this for 6 months and it's not working for them. And maybe at that point they'd be willing to try something like an HFBO option, or at least try to do some kind of an elimination diet and get some of the inflammatory stuff out. Because a lot of people are consuming dairy and all these people are still drinking coffee, and all these things cause problems for people.
Sometimes. So 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 yeah, the it's very individual. This is a journey, and this is you're gonna you are 100%, or I would say people are 100% going to have to figure this out for themselves and do it in a methodical manner. And if you can have a Sherpa like you walking them through the process, or someone like me who's like, I don't have the answers for you, but I'm here with you on your journey of figuring them out. And I know that figuring this stuff out for people is possible. Then I think that that is really valuable and really helpful. So when I work with people, I don't take their dairy away. I don't take their coffee away. I do take their grains away. I do not want any gluten near anybody. Um, and yes, I know if you go to Italy, I haven't had pasta, it doesn't cause problems, but I'm not in Italy, and maybe you're in Italy, but a brain
Yeah.
healthy ketogenic diet for me is no gluten, no grains. Hard. That's really my only hard no on the program. That and seed oils. It's like, gosh, just avoid them like the plague. I get it. If you're on a road trip, you're going to do the best you can. I get it, but don't make yourself, again, when people are really anxious and really um, oh, what's the word, vigilant, that's a whole metabolic stressor on its own, right, for disrupting their brain. So it's got to be a balance. So really I wait for people to come to me and be like, maybe it's the dairy, and I'm like, maybe it is. Do you want to talk about how to do a ketogenic diet without that? Or they come to me and they're like, I'm doing really well, but I think maybe I need to try carnivore. Okay, what kind of carnivore? What are we talking about? Are you going to have dairy in it? Are you going to take out? Are you going to let yourself have coffee? Are you not? Are you going to be able to eat all that animal fat, right? Because tallow and lard, and it's a thing. Not everyone's got a taste for that. And many of the people I work with are low income, and I have a lot of high income people in my program also, but many are low income, and I do not want them stressing out about grass fed beef. I get, people get a lot of healing on conventional everything if they must. They get quite far, and then they often come to me. They're like, I think I'm going to start to try to budget in some grass fed. Okay, great. So I think that everybody's going to find their path, and it's just we get the honor of being on that journey with them and helping them decide when they're ready to put things in or not. Because I think sometimes, you know, if we have too many rules, there's a barrier to entry for many people.
I agree with you. And I say the same things. Grains got to go. Seed oils got to go. And I'll also say that, like you have said, we're not looking for perfection. We aim for perfection to help guide us, but we're not perfect. So we just do the best that we can. And so, like you said, if you go to a restaurant or someone goes on a cruise or whatever it is, yeah, anytime you eat out at a restaurant, you're going to get seed oils.
It's
There's nothing you
rough.
can do about it.
Yeah, it's
Doesn't
rough
mean
out
you
there.
can't ever, but you're not going to cook your vegetables and your steak in canola oil anymore. You got to scrap that. And then, like you said, you don't want it to be a barrier to entry. So if someone is just starting out and they don't think they could even do a ketogenic diet, I'll just say, if you're eating a lot of greens, you're eating pasta, you're eating bread, just take those things out. It could be that simple to start out with. It's a great place to start.
Absolutely. Yeah. Getting rid of sugar and highly processed foods can just be the very first step for people. In fact, I was thinking about maybe I need to make like a little video that for people, if the demand for a nonprofit entry gets really big, that can be like while you're waiting, start here, get ready to get ready.
Great idea. Yeah. So that's one of my questions I had here in the section of practical tools and healing What are some small actionable steps someone can take to start supporting their brain health through nutrition? So we mentioned a couple. We mentioned the greens and the seed oils. What else would you put on that list? Processed foods?
Oh, yeah. I think it's really important. It's important to stop seeing ultra processed foods as psychoactive substance ways that you change your brain chemistry, right? So you kind of have to really think of them as these are psychoactive substances, so I'm on these medications, my brain doesn't feel good, I'm just trying to feel good. These spike my dopamine, these spike my right neurochemistry in a way that feels good for a short period of time, but it's really not going to work long term, and so it kind of goes against all the things that you say you want for yourself. And then to believe that it's possible for your brain chemistry to improve enough and to become stable enough that you won't feel like you need those foods, I think is important too. And the narrative around them is it's very, I don't know. I there's a mind shift that kind of goes on when you think about the metabolic effects of these foods, how they have been designed in such a way to make you crave them, designed in such a way that you're hungry again a little while later, designed in such a way that they actually take the joy away from normal food. Because like a sweet potato can't compete with a bag of Doritos, right? Which one are you gonna reach for, right? One is made to just hit all of your to manipulate you, right? And I don't know about you, but once I understand that someone does not have my best interest at heart and is trying to manipulate me, it's way easier to say no, thank you. Yes, how dare you? How dare you even suggest that I eat these Doritos, right? So, having a narrative that is very clear with reality, which is the reality is these food companies that make these ultra processed foods do not care about you. They say they're trying to bring you joy. That's what they're offering. But really, they're substances. And just like you wouldn't bring in a drug pusher off the street to your child's birthday party, right? You don't bring that stuff in to your house because they really don't have a lot of benefit. They're not food. They're not food. They're just not food. Stop calling them food. Stop thinking about them as food. They're drugs. They're drugs. And just because they're sold in a store doesn't mean they're food. Like, you got to think a little bit deeper here about this, right? What is the purpose of this? Does it nourish me? No, it actually depletes my micronutrients in order to try to make energy out of it and process it. It depletes my magnesium. It's got garbage forms of vitamins that I can't even use very well, right? Like, it's not food. That's not the definition of food, right? But and part of being a psychotherapist, I do trainings for mental health counselors and psychologists and psychotherapists about ketogenic diets, and one of the things we have to talk about is that there are neurobiological and neuroendocrine effects in eating disorders. And if we had an alcoholic or someone who had a drug problem in front of us, and they said, I feel really out of control around this substance, like I can't control myself, we would not say, oh, but in all drugs fit matters, right? Like whatever that crazy thing is we say, all foods fit, all drugs fit, all alcohol fits, you should be able to have a little bit of that and be okay. We don't do that to people. And yet these ultra processed foods have well documented neuroendocrine and neurobiological effects. So it just doesn't make sense. So that's something I talk about in my professional trainings. Like, I get that the psychology world really wants an all foods fit model. I understand clinical psychology does not want restriction. They have a belief that restriction will always cause an eating disorder. That is not validated in the research literature in any way, shape, or form. And so, yeah, it's just very weird. So, I don't know. Did I answer your question? I went off on a tangent.
No, that was awesome. And I'm laughing over here because you sound just like me, and I can't wait for my wife to hear this and hear you say it's not food, because I say that all the time
It's
and
not
she's like
food.
she's just so sick of it. But you'll say just because it's in a package doesn't mean it's food. I'll say, well, if it's in a package, it's most likely not food. A lot of our packaged stuff is highly processed, and it's it's just so funny. But the thing you said about an alcoholic or an addict, like if someone's an alcoholic, you wouldn't give them a little bit of cocaine, you know. So
Yeah.
if you have a problem with food, or if you're, I have a strong addiction history, and I have a problem with food, and so moderation doesn't work for someone like me. You can't moderate a substance that is going to addict you. And this is the reason that I don't do dairy, because I get strong cravings for it. And that whole idea that it comes from, I hear it coming from nutritionists a lot, that you should be able to moderate. And like you said, the fear is if you restrict too much and that's going to cause an eating disorder. But when you listen to the anecdotal stories from people, eating a restrictive diet is healing their eating disorders. It's healing their binge eating. Right? So I've become a binge eater over the years, but eating this way, eating a high fat diet takes all my cravings away. And I'm doing the most restricted form of this diet possible. I have a large pile of fat and a small pile of meat, and I eat once a day, and then I throw fasting in, and it's like as restrictive as you can get. I don't frame it that way, because I'll tell people will say I can't eat like you eat because it's so strict and restrictive, and I'll say, well, I can eat whatever I want. I make my own decisions. I will suffer consequences if I go have pizza or ice cream or whatever. So I don't consider it strict or restrictive. What I consider restrictive is eating any other way, eating all the things that affect me, because it restricts me from being the person that I want to be. And eating a high fat diet, like I said, takes all my cravings away, and it heals my any kind of binge eating disorder that I have. It doesn't cause it.
And you're not alone. That's what we're seeing in the case study literature around eating disorders. And yeah, and I would also say, so a lot of people, one of the main questions I get to in my online program and in my work is am I always going to have to be on a medical ketogenic diet? And I don't think we know the answer to that. So we kind of know the answer to it from the epilepsy world. And in the epilepsy world, after 1 to 5 years, I think Chris has talked about it, and I've heard Beth Zupek Kania talk about it. After 1 to 5 years, people will start to explore with increasing carbohydrate intake into tolerable levels, and it's a very careful process. And some people even move into a low glycemic index, which is really quite a lot of carbs after you've been on a medical keto diet. And so yeah, I mean, you do what you need to do to heal your brain. Yeah, and you may or may not need to be as restrictive or whatever. But I would say also, for some people, I think there are certain macronutrient ratios that they thrive on better than others, and in different periods of their life, or for different needs or reasons. And so be curious to see where you are in 10 years, if you're still eating this way, or if you've moved into something else because you were able, or you just wanted to.
Yeah, it's interesting. People ask me that all the time. Like, well, you're just going to eat this way forever? I'm like, well, I'm going to eat this way for as long as I need to feel happy and calm, and as long as it works for me. And I don't care. I enjoy every bite of every meal. Fortunately, I enjoy eating solid animal fat. I've been doing this for like 6 years now, and I have good connections with my local butchers, and I get high quality. I'm getting prime rib beef fat, and I'm getting all the lamb fat. They're cutting off their leg of lambs, and I love it. And
Yeah.
I can prepare it all different ways. I can air fry it crispy if I want. I can throw it on the grill. I eat it raw sometimes. Like, I do all kinds of things, and I love it. But I just want to feel good. I want to be happy and calm, and I want to be the best dad I can be. That's really my motivation. So if this is the diet that gets me there, maybe in 10 years when my daughter's grown up and out of the house, maybe I won't need that extra level of calm. And maybe I will at that point. I can't imagine myself all of a sudden eating pizza. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not going to all of a sudden go have a seed oil and grain bomb, but
Hmm.
I may want to add in some other foods. It would be nice sometimes if I didn't have to do the 90% all the time.
Yeah.
I enjoy my days where I can lift weights and then eat a whole bunch of steaks and I can do it like 70% or 75%. But if I do that more than a couple days in a row, I'm definitely going to get irritable and angry. And if I do it long enough, I'm going to go into my hole and withdraw from the world. And that's not the kind of person I want to be. So my answer is, yeah, I'll do this as long as I need to. And it's working and I like it and it's easy. So I just do it.
I'm glad you found what works for you.
But it's been through a lot of self experimentation, a lot of falling down and getting back up and testing things out. And this is what I tell people. And people like, they always say, I can't do it what you do. I'm like, well, if I woke up today and I was doing a standard American diet and you told me I had to do this diet I'm doing, there's no way I could do it either. You can't just jump into it. It's a 6-year journey of me doing this to figure this out, and I'm still finding new levels and new areas to experiment with and how to mix in the fasting and how to cycle my protein. Like it's a constant journey and it's constant experimentation and learning what works best. And again, pragmatism, doing what works at the time. So like 2 years ago, I wasn't even working out at all. A year ago, I was only sprinting. Now I'm sprinting and I'm also weightlifting. So I'm trying to like add a little more protein and like trying to figure that out. And it's all about just self experimenting, but it starts with tracking. I weigh and track everything. It all goes in chronometer. I'm like a geek with data. So I have spreadsheets and I'm seeing how much protein I'm having every day. And then I see my average for the week. And I'm trying to get like, say 100 grams per day average for the week. But I may have 3 days in a row where I'm at like 20, then 30, then 20 again. And then I have a day that's like 250. And then I go back to the 20 or like I go back to low because I'm doing like I say 4-to-1, but a lot of times, like yesterday, I was a 10-to-1 ratio. I had just a little bit of meat and a lot of fat. So it's just playing around, looking at the numbers, looking at the data, and then seeing what works and testing my blood. I still test my blood every day in the morning. And one thing I wanted to ask you about, so if someone's got insulin resistance, do you recommend that they test later in the day, like 2 hours after their last meal? Because I hear that from some people. I'm not sure where they got it from.
Yeah, so the psychotherapist in me thinks about the ramifications of different times of testing and what that does for motivation and that kind of thing. So I do like to get a morning number early on of glucose and ketone levels. And if the ketones are low and the glucose is high, I say you got to get rid of that glucose out of your blood. You got to jump out of bed and do some squats and some push-ups and chase the dog or whatever you need to do to burn that, to sink that glucose into your muscles. And if you do that, your ketone levels will improve throughout the day. Now, I work with a lot of people on a lot of medications, and that's a big ask because the motivation is low, right? Their brain chemistry isn't in such a place where they want to run around the house with the dog. But often they often surprise me and they'll be like, I did 50 squats out of bed and I did the thing, because they are so motivated to get better. They're like, just tell me what to do, and they do it. And so I do that, but I don't make them test in the morning a lot often, because for many of them, they've taken their medication at night as prescribed and it affects their blood sugar by morning, and they've got that dawn effect and it doesn't burn off very well for them. So I have them do it in the afternoon, often between lunch and dinner. There's usually, not always, because medication side effects make people really hungry all the time. They're eating constantly. But many of them have a little window there and we test. And usually that can be their highest level for the day. And that can be more motivating for them. And we get that in a good place. And then we move back to the morning testing to kind of see what that looks like. So that's how I like to do it.
That's great. I'm really glad you shared that because this is a big talking point with people that I'm working with, when to test. And one of the things I always say is, like, if you're going to be a morning person or you're going to be an afternoon person, just pick your time and that's your style and you stick to it. At least you'll have a consistent measurement that way. I prefer to test first thing in the morning, right upon waking. Within 5 minutes of getting up out of bed, I'm testing. And people say, well, what about the dawn effect? And I'll say, yeah, that's exactly why I'm testing in the morning, because if I can nail that number in the morning with the dawn effect, that means I'm doing something right. That means I'm doing it right. If I had the money and the strips just went up on Keto Mojo, if they weren't so expensive, I would test twice a day. I always like testing late at night before bed. So I'm typically eating once a day, and it's usually midday. It's anywhere from 11 to 2 maybe. So by 8 o'clock at night, I've been fasted at least 6 hours. And I like testing just because that's when I see my best numbers. and I'll get crazy ketones like in the 5s and 6s sometimes, and my
Yeah.
sugar will be super low, and it's just fun. It's fun, and I like tracking too. So, but I just can't afford it. So I still test every morning at least to keep myself accountable. And like I said, I just tell people like find what works for you and at least keep it consistent. But I like how you said in between lunch and dinner. So what if you're somebody who's only eating twice a day? It would be in between those two meals. I guess if you're having like an early breakfast and maybe a later dinner, it would be
Yeah.
somewhere in between.
So a lot of the people I work with, I put them on 3 meals a day
Okay.
because because for some people they when they if we don't keep their protein very moderate per meal, then their ketone levels will drop, and because they have such insulin resistance, it will stay dropped for a period of time, and their brain is not happy when that happens, right? That's a hungry brain. The brain's not getting the energy it needs for that 4 hours for their insulin levels to drop enough and go back up. So I will often put people who like to be 2 meals a day on 3 meals a day for a period of time, because if you have your, let's say you're going to eat, you need 120 grams of protein because of the size of human you are, and and I break that into 2 meals. That's 60 grams of protein. That might, and if it's a good quality animal protein, that's going to have certain amino acids that spike insulin and lower ketone levels. And so, so they won't be in ketosis an hour after eating 60 grams of protein in one of their 2 meals. So I will break that up. And there's different things that we kind of do. So I would, if someone is doing 2 meals a day successfully, and keeping their ketones kind of in a good range, I will sometimes have them test right before their first meal, because I'm curious about what the level is before eating, because they've been fasting for 18 hours, 16 hours before those meals. And so I'm curious what that level is and what that looks like. And then you have to explain to people, as if you did a HIIT workout before that first meal, that's going to affect the ketone levels, or you've exercised, or you walked up a hill really fast, stuff like that.
So I want to talk to you about this protein thing. This is one of the questions I was going to ask you when we got to our rapid fire at the end. I've been trying to find this answer about gluconeogenesis and if it's supply driven or demand driven. I, I want to know the answer to that. Nobody seems to know, but I also want to know, why is it when we eat lots of protein, our sugar goes up so high and our ketones go down? Why is it spiking insulin? I have found with myself that if I eat a lot of protein for a bunch of days, my fasted glucose in the morning could be in the low 100s. And I haven't had any carbs for months now. I could be like 110, 111 just by eating a bunch of protein. Why is that happening?
You got to get Ben Bigman on here because he would know. So I know that it's really, I don't know the answer to that, because I've heard two things. So I've been trained by dietitians in the epilepsy world who are very clear that if the protein is, not moderate, that's going to cause an effect on ketone levels. Like, you got to moderate protein. And then I've also heard from other experts, that there isn't, so it's just not clear in terms of that. And so I think you should ask Ben on and just really kind of ask for that clarification. So I have a little biochemistry, but I don't know. I know that there's a disconnect between what we're told, what's academic, what the researchers know, and what people are experiencing on their ketogenic diet. And I acknowledge that there's that gap, but I don't know. I remember hearing that it's possibly an adaptation of sorts, in that the tissues start to prefer fatty acids for fuels, and it doesn't actually want necessarily the dawn effect glucose or need it, and so it's just hanging out in the bloodstream longer. But that was just a theory, someone's theory. It's just, there's really a lot of interesting research that kind of needs to happen around all this.
That's an interesting theory. I've never heard that before. I like the sound of that because I eat a lot of calories most days. And so if I eat 3,000 calories and it's at 90%, I'm going to wake up and my glucose is probably going to be in the low 80s or lower, and my ketones are going to be high. But if I did the same 3,000 calories and I do it at 70%, it's going to be nowhere near that. My glucose is going to be in the 90s. My ketones will probably be in the ones, maybe even lower. And I just trying to find a scientific reason for it. It's very interesting to me. I want to know what's going on inside my body that it's treating protein like it would carbohydrates, because when I fall off and I eat carbohydrates, my bloods are about the same as when I eat a lot of protein. I just find it interesting.
Yeah. You need to ask Ben to go on and like send him that question ahead of time. So he's great. He's a great teacher.
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard him talk about these things, but it does seem that there's not really a clear answer on what's going on.
I don't quite get it either. But I think it's something that we're gonna figure out for sure with that.
I hope so, because then at some point we could figure out, like maybe for your size and your weight, what's the threshold of protein you could have a day where you're not going to end up increasing your sugar. I would like to. I've figured it out on my own, but it would be nice to be able to give that information to other people and say, hey, you're 5'6", you're 150, and like you do with people, like you should be having 40 grams 3 times a day or something like that. And that's going to be appropriate. I guess that would be considered moderate. People don't want to hear that, especially people that are coming from a carnivore background. They don't want to hear moderate protein, because now all of a sudden, where are you getting all this fat from? It's difficult for some people.
Yeah, no, it's difficult, and people ask me all the time, should I do a ketogenic diet or should I do a carnivore diet? And just in my live Q&A on Monday, I had a discussion with someone where we were talking about the pros and cons of it, and they were saying that I think the carnivore thing might be best for me. I just want to do that for now because that is easy and I don't have to overthink it. And we talked about, okay, you can try that, but if you experience disruptions in mood for whatever reason, it might be you have one of those brains right now that just really needs consistent ketone production. And if that's the case, we can change your carnivore diet in such a way that it's higher fat, higher animal fat, um, and maybe moderate protein. You eat smaller meals throughout the day. So we had this whole conversation, and that's a thing. Um, I know that early on in my brain healing journey, I would eat because I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't trained. I don't know, no idea what I was doing. I was just trying my best. And, like I did track, but I didn't understand how useful the per meal kind of macros can be, the ratios per meal, as opposed to just the whole day. And so I would sit down and I would eat like a burger bowl, right? And I would have like, half a pound, maybe 3/4 a pound of beef. And I did not feel good afterwards. And I know now that I had a big amount of animal protein and my ketones dropped for a long time after that. And I think that can also set up a little bit of a dysfunctional fasting thing for people. So for the people who are sensitive in their brain, really do struggle when they do not have ketones on board or access to ketones for brain fuel. That when they do a ketogenic diet and they don't understand all these different nuances to it, and they just eat a giant steak, and everyone else says, "Oh, I feel great after a giant steak." Well, and then they get a drop in brain energy and they don't feel as good. I think it makes them not want to eat. I think it can really expand out that time when they eat, when really all they need to do is change the ratios per meal, and then they can eat and feel really good, and it's okay. And so there's all these different nuances. So if people are struggling or they don't feel good, like that's a clue something's just not right. It just needs to be fine-tuned.
Yeah, exactly. It's been my experience too. So I'll start out with people, and I don't get into per meal to start out with, because it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. But people are coming to me and they've been doing a couple of weeks, and their fat is, say, 75% every day, but they're just not really getting the benefits they want. And then I look at their meals, and it's like, okay, their morning meal was like 60% fat, and their dinner was like 90 to get, or whatever it is to get them. Like, okay, so now we can tweak it. Now we're going to aim for every meal. And for a lot of people, that will give them benefits when they start adhering to those macros for each meal of the day. It does help. So what do you think? You want to go on to questions from the community?
We can go on with questions
All right,
from the
cool. So
community.
my first question is from Robin Dobbins. She's one of the Fresh Start Award winners. And so she wants to know if you're on a ketogenic diet and you take antibiotics and it causes depression, is there a remedy and how can you quickly recover and thoroughly recover from that?
Yeah, that's a hard question. Um, yes, it disrupts the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome is thought to be part of the reason we see mood effects because of it. They think it's part of the treatment effects and the increase of GABA and the reduction of glutamate levels. And so I hear that all the time. I had to take an antibiotic, or I was prescribed an antibiotic, and I've got mood issues going on. And there's really a lot of concern about disruption of the gut microbiome with that. So I don't, I have mixed feelings about probiotics. I really do. And really, I have seen clinically myself, and I've heard other clinicians who do this with mental health populations talk about this, that um, they can be they can be doing a ketogenic diet and doing really, really well and having great symptom reduction or just even remission. And they will add a probiotic because people just think probiotics are good for you no matter what they are. And my stance, I think, is a little bit controversial because I'm like, you're not smart enough to know what's going on in there. Like, we don't know exactly what strains, and what amounts, in what ratios, and there's genetic material going on that's being processed under there. Like, we're not smart enough to mess with the gut microbiome, in my opinion. Get out of the kitchen. You're in the way of the ketogenic diet and what it's trying to do. Right? Get out of the way of the ketogenic diet. Stop adding things in that's disrupting the healing that's trying to happen. You don't know what you're doing, and neither does that guy prescribing your probiotics, very likely, right? That said, you can get a serious tummy ache from antibiotics, right? And a lot of digestive distress. So I kind of trust that the microbiome to sort itself out. But I think if I needed to add something, I would probably do more of the soil based probiotics that exist, or just something, because really you've got butyrate on board. It's healing. It's healing the gut. And you've got a very specific thing your ketogenic diet is trying to do. And if you want to reseed it, so to speak, or you believe that it needs reseeded, um, you can do that. But I would just be very, very careful. You know, and this is very different than what the old school dietitians do. Like, they started people on ketogenic diets and they would just add probiotics right in the beginning, and they still got good treatment effects. But I would argue that the probiotics of 10 years ago are different than the probiotics now, right? Our probiotics 10 years ago, maybe it had like 3 live cultures in a whole in a whole capsule. They weren't very powerful, and the stuff that's being formulated now really gets to the gut intact and really has very strong, powerful effects. And so my stance is be cautious and be careful. If someone's really having a digestive issue after antibiotics, look for soil-based probiotics. I know that sounds weird. Just look it up. You'll see. Throw it on ChatGPT. It'll tell you. But that's where I would head, and I'd be very careful.
All right, I'm glad for the caution because that's the same thing that I would say to people. I've never heard of soil-based probiotics. I'm not familiar with that, so I will be looking that up. Thanks.
Curiosity. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, the next one is from Shannon Harwood. She's another Fresh Start Award winner. She wants to know, for people that are doing long-term keto, do you see lower ketone numbers for them?
I do. So that's another thing that, gosh, I'm very contrary about all the ways we do things, aren't I? I'm kind of a weird person that way. I'm very contrary. So, and I don't do it on purpose. I just think about things a little bit differently. Um, so that's gotten me in trouble too. So, we don't look to the epilepsy literature enough when we think about doing ketogenic diets. They have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, know the things, and we really don't look at that carefully enough. So when people talk about being on ketogenic diets for a long period of time and their ketones go down, we always say, well, that just means your body is absorbing more, which is true. And it means that your tissues are better adapted, which is true. But you know what else it could also be, and is also likely to be, is that you've developed a carnitine insufficiency or deficiency. And in the research literature, just I think last year, there was one published showing that adults on a modified Atkins diet, um, so again, not even utilizing all the fat. So for people who are new to carnitine, carnitine is an amino acid. You do make some on your own from other amino acids put together, and then you also get it from red meat. Carne means red in Latin. You have to have carnitine to take a fatty acid that you have burned off your body fat or from your diet into the mitochondrial membrane to make a ketone body. Brains do not run on fatty acids, they run on ketones. So if I have you on a ketogenic diet for mental illness, I'm really going to want to make sure you have ketones. And if you have become carnitine insufficient over 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, then your ketone levels going down matters to me, right? Because I'm trying to fuel your brain. I'm trying to help you fuel your brain. And so I don't think that should be ignored. I think that you go to, you get from Own Your Labs or whatever, you get a carnitine panel, you look at your free and total carnitine. And if your carnitine is low, and I'm not going to give you the magical number for that because it varies. It's a judgment call on the dietitian or the nutritionist call about whether carnitine needs to be done or not. But then you should supplement carnitine. Athletes often will burn through their carnitine quite quickly. And you can become carnitine sufficient. So I just wonder how many long-term low-carb people are out there that say, yeah, I've got low ketones, and maybe they've even noticed a drop in energy compared to where they used to be. And they're just ignoring it because there's that not dogma, but that narrative out about, oh, well, the longer you're low carb, the less ketones you have. And that might be just fine, but it also might not be, and it might need to be addressed, particularly if you're using it as a treatment for mental illness.
Awesome. This is really interesting. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Becca Price. So she says, in the metabolic psychiatry movement, we hear a lot about people's lived experiences. How is that different from just anecdotal evidence?
Yeah. Well, how is that different? Well, it isn't. It's anecdotal evidence. But I would say that when you have hundreds and thousands of anecdotal evidences, at some point that becomes a sample. And whether it's an unbiased sample or not is, of course, an issue. But I think that, when we look at the evidence base, so I know Becca, I recognize her name. She took my CEU course. I think
Yes,
she
you
was
did.
like one of the first humans in there, right? She was
Oh,
ready
great.
to go. Before I closed it down just for psychotherapists, professionals, that was open to the public there for a couple times. And Becca was in there. And so Becca knows that in the pyramid of evidence, of evidence-based treatments, there's a pyramid, and the foundation of that, for to some degree, are case studies and anecdotal evidence, and whether those get published or not. And so, yeah, I think that someone, this cat, having cat problems. Sorry, sit down, Mrs. Cat, sit down. So I think that at some point, when you have thousands of anecdotal evidences coming in, that should get people very curious. But I'd have to kind of know a little bit more about what was motivating her question to answer it better.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Next up, I have a question from Craig Latta. You may have seen him in the Facebook group. He's out in Australia. He's got a son in his 20s with bipolar. He wants to know about BHB supplementation because they're finding that they're able to put his mania back in the box at around 3.5 ketones. So if he's going through a crisis, he wants to know how much BHB is okay to use. Is it okay to use a larger amount during a crisis if he's combining it with MCT?
That is an area that he should hit up Dom D'Agostino with that question, because Dom is much more into the use of exogenous ketones than I am. So BHB, and then I'm thinking about other metabolic psychiatrists that I've talked to that talk about how BHB affects medication and stuff like that. So I can't give too good of help with that. I know that MCT oil is a slower burning exogenous ketone that provides a nice steady level, and BHB for most people is on the top. And if you suck down a whole bunch of BHB at once that your body can't absorb, you're going to pee out a lot of that. It's going to be expensive urine. And so I learned from Dom that you have a foundation of MCT, exogenous ketones, and then you add on and sip on BHB salts, for example, for that BHB. And so, that's a hard question. So I have heard anecdotal reports of people having panic attacks and taking exogenous BHB and then feeling a lot better and feeling calmer. And that, of course, makes sense, right? But I don't know what the right dosage for that would be. Again, you should get Dom on and ask that same question. Be good.
I would love to, because I was curious what the answer would be too. I don't really
Mm-hmm.
know. I know in my experience, when I've taken either the salts or the liquids or whatever, they don't do much for my mental health. If I'm irritable and angry or I feel depressed, they don't make me feel better. They give me a boost of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I have taken them and tested before and after, and I will see an increase in ketones, but it doesn't really do much for me. For me, my body needs ketones produced naturally to feel well, and I usually need a couple of days of it. I need like 2 or 3 days before I'm going to feel better. I can't get a quick fix from the subs, unfortunately.
Yeah. And when I use it in my program, I'll tell you, I do recommend them sometimes in my program. I have people with stage 1 Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease that do feel better on a BHB supplement. And so what I tell them is, make a glass of it and drink a third of it down quick, maybe even as much as a half, and then wait and see how your brain feels, and then sip on the rest for the day, or for the few hours. I have people who take, again, these are different neurological conditions. We just don't have guidelines for like how to help with exogenous ketones. Dom, we need you to get on this. We need to know the doses. Um, and so yeah, so just everybody is a little bit different. I remember early on in my journey, before I was on a ketogenic diet, hearing them talk about exogenous ketones and trying them and not getting any benefit whatsoever. And now that I am very low carb and ketogenic, I do feel a difference with them. I feel improved brain energy. And so, everybody has to just kind of feel it out.
Yeah, just like everything else, it's going to be an individual experience. And that's what I tell people. Just because it doesn't really work for me doesn't mean it won't work for you. You got to try it and see.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of making a tall glass of it and sipping on it. That's great advice right there. So next up, I have a friend, Sue. She's got a son who is schizophrenic, and she's asked some questions. Her and her son have started doing ketogenic diet recently. She wants to know if you have support groups for the different illnesses. Like, would there be a schizophrenic support group that he would be in if he was joining?
No. So the people in my program are all there for the express purpose of brain health, of having their very, very best brain. And so I have people with, I have ladies in there who just are noticing they have a lot of brain fog, kind of cognitive impairment. Their memory's not very good. They don't even identify with a mental health diagnosis or a neurological issue. They might have brain fog issues because of PCOS or kinds of things. So I have that range all the way to people, like I said, with early Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, treatment-resistant depression. Like we're just all there on a journey to have our very best brain, and as a result, our very, very best experience in life. And so, and that works really well. It works really well to kind of have everybody working on all kinds of different things.
All right, sounds great. All right, so we got to get you out of here soon. So I'm going to ask you a couple of closing questions.
Okay.
I have 2 questions that are posed to your younger self, and they're similar, but the first is related to diet and mental health, and the second is not necessarily related to that. So the first one is, what is a piece of advice you'd give your younger self before you discovered this diet? Something along the lines of how to get through the tough times.
My goodness, this is a hard question because you're not even the same person you were back then. So, me having all of this life experience and all of these life experiences telling my younger self what to do or not do is just not even a valid thing, right? Because she was a very different person. I'm not sure this is a good, useful question. Um, so what was the question again? Say it again, Stephen. I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
You're talking to your younger self
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to help them get through the tough times. What would you tell them related to diet and mental health to get through the tough times?
Diet and mental health. So I'm allowed to give diet advice to my younger self in this
Of
question.
course. Yeah, of course.
Don't eat that. Don't eat that. That's going to make you feel like crap later. That is not your fuel. That's not what you run on, race car Nicole. You do not run on those carbs. You run on fat. That is your fuel. And as soon as you change your fuel source, everything's going to change. That's what I would tell her.
There you go. That's perfect. That was perfect. So the second question is similar, but it's not related to diet and mental health. It's just going back in time and giving yourself a piece of advice. What would it be?
Let's see. What your attention is on, where you think your attention needs to be, um, is not really what's going to fill you up and what's going to drive you.
Another great one. Thank you very much. I have one last question that I ask all my guests. This is my signature question, and it should encourage you to share a broader, more philosophical insight or a life lesson that ties in with your experience with the ketogenic lifestyle and provide something meaningful and potentially new even after our in-depth interview. This is my fat-fueled philosophy question. What's one powerful piece of fat-fueled philosophy, a life lesson, or a mantra that you've embraced on your ketogenic journey and you think could inspire our listeners?
This is not how your story ends. Wherever you are in this moment, what's there, how you're feeling, what you think is possible, you don't know how the story ends. So don't close the doors on what might be possible. So there can be absolutely no indication that anything could potentially get better, that this is just it. And you can even have a bunch of doctors telling you this is it, right? This is as good as it's going to get for you. And you just don't know what's going to be possible in 5, 10, 15 years. So if you get to the emotional place where you are brave enough to hope and you're ready to explore that, there's lots of really loving, smart, educated people who will go on that journey with you.
That was beautifully said. I'm going to give you the round of applause for that. Hopefully you hear that. Did you hear the applause? Doesn't always come out. All right, great. Yeah, that was beautifully stated. Thank you so much. So now I'm assuming you haven't seen any of my shows, right? You don't know what's coming next. You don't know what we do at the end, right?
I saw your one with Casey Ruff.
Oh, you did? Did you see it? You didn't see. You didn't see it to the end.
After CrossFit, I happened to be like on there waiting for someone to make me food, and I was visiting. So I see.
That's right.
I know we're gonna have a thing on a weekend or something, and do that.
That's right. I remember you were in the chat there interacting with us, but you didn't see the end, right?
No, I didn't get a chance.
All right. So I have my tagline for the show. I just took my headphones off so I can't hear you, but I have my tagline for the show, and it's "Fix yourself with fat." I have my own unique way of saying it. I put my get up on for it. So I have my tenets in life, and it starts with the ketogenic diet and fasting, and there's all this stuff I do. But one of my tenets in life is to have fun and enjoy life. So I like to take us out with a laugh.
Okay.
I have my own unique way of saying the tagline. I say, "Fix yourself with fat." I pretend this is like my rapper persona.
Okay.
So what I've been doing is asking all my guests to say the tagline in their own unique way. And I've been putting a compilation together of everybody doing the tagline. That's going to be a video I'm going to release. So what do you think, Nicole? Is that something you can do for us today?
Yes. And do you want me to say it in a silly way, or is my face
It's in
going to be
your
shown, or is it just my voice?
No, your face is going to be shown. We're on video, and it's just your own. It's your own unique way. I want you to do whatever the Nicole thing is.
Oh my gosh. Do I get to take extra takes if it doesn't work?
Of course, yeah, of course,
Okay. Okay.
absolutely.
Fix yourself with fat. There. How's that? Is
That
that
was
too
perfect.
silly?
No, it was perfect. The whole idea is we just spent 2 hours talking about a lot of serious stuff, and we're trying to take it out with a laugh. We want people to laugh. We want it to be silly, right?
Yes.
That's the whole idea. When I had Vinny Tortorich on, he was like, "So you want me to say fix yourself with fat? Is that what you want me to do?" Like, yeah, that's what I want you to do.
Okay.
When I had Georgia on, she said, "Oh yeah, I can do that. That's easy." I was like, "All right, good answer." Do you know Natasha Smichaels?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I interviewed her recently. She did a whole thing with a song. She did like a
Oh,
whole lyrics thing. Because she knew it was coming. Yeah, she did a whole thing to a Taylor Swift song. It was really cool.
wow.
She was
Well,
put
I
a lot of
can't
work.
compete with that. I'm not prepared. And also, I'm not as cool as Natasha, so it's good.
She's a lot of fun.
She is.
We've been fasting together. Her and I and Janet Ebos. We have a little fasting group. I want to thank you for your time. It's been a long time with our scheduling, and I've really been looking forward to having you on. And like I said in the beginning, the community really has a deep spot in their heart for you. You are loved and you are cherished, and people are really going to enjoy this interview and they're going to get a lot out of it. And I just, more than anything, I appreciate you giving us your time so that you can help. Thank you.
It's my honor. Thank you for having me.